And we have in the other corner, the red corner, in the black and gold shorts tonight, Tommy Legit, Uggo D. Goes by Daddy Fat Sacks in some circles. Welcome, Tom. Go ahead.
That is a new nickname never before heard or displayed in any capacity ever. But yes, it's me standing at 5'11", weighing in at a brisk 360 pounds. Offensive center, ready for attack. It's going to be a fun day today, guys. We're going to be talking about, got some news and notes to kick the show off. We're going to be talking about some fantasy draft, a little bit of tidbits on that, what you should be looking for, who you might want to be targeting, especially in the early rounds. And then we're going to break down some NFL football, give some predictions for a specific division. We'll announce it a little later in the show, but we're going to do this every week leading up through the beginning of August. We're going to break down our predictions for each division. We're going to go division by division in the National Football League. And that's going to lead up, folks, to another announcement we're going to have at the end of the show. We're going to announce a future segment so that you can keep your eyes on, keep your ears open, because we think it's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm excited. I think there's a lot of content that we're going to get through today that people are going to be really interested in.
I would agree. And actually, I have a little question of the day for you.
Okay, shoot.
So I was thinking about it, and I like questions of the day. If you could steal one player from your NFL team's rival team for the 2023 season, what are you looking at?
Mm-hmm. So we're assuming my NFL team is the Seattle Seahawks.
Yes.
Okay, and are we determining that this is that the Niners are the rival team for them, or or is there another team that? Do I have options, or is that the team?
As a Seahawks fan, I would say that in at least recent history, I would say the Niners have probably come to the forefront as more of a rival than I know the St. Louis Rams were kind of a rival, oddly enough, for a little bit.
Believe me, that was a big time rivalry with Mike Holmgren at the helm. Oh boy,
yeah. I would say in as of late, I would comfortably say that the Niners are a front runner. I would say the Packers not as much, maybe the Patriots not as much, but probably the Niners at the forefront.
We could probably also throw the Broncos in there at this point, just because of recent history. And
Super Bowl wasn't even close, but
the extended history, if you go all the way back to when the Seattle Seahawks were in the AFC, for all you history buffs out there, that's right. The Seattle Seahawks used to be in the AFC West against the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Raiders. So,
and that's the kind of football knowledge you're gonna get here at the Ball Bag. Okay,
people forget. Okay, don't forget. Okay, Bo Jackson. We had to play that, okay? And we put our high-powered mullet rookie linebacker up against him, and he got bowled the fuck over. All right?
Can't confirm.
This is an easy choice if we're choosing from the Niners. It's Joey Bosa. It's the easiest choice out there. Right? Is it Joey Bosa or the other Bosa that's on the Niners? Whoever the Bosa is on the Niners, that's the choice. The Seahawks need pass rush. He's an elite pass rushing defensive end.
Nick Bosa.
All right, there's two of them. They're both really freaking good, and they both play in California.
Joey is on the Chargers?
Yeah.
Okay,
But
Chargers.
Nick Bosa, excellent player, had a monstrous year last year, bunch of sacks. If you take him and put him in the Seahawks defense, thank you very much for an increased pass rush. It'd be the equivalent if you were to take Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett, put them back on that defensive line. Hands down, Bosa's the choice, and it's, for me, not really close.
Do you want to do a one defense, one offense, or just one straight across? I didn't really think about that.
I don't know. Did you have a selection? Did you have somebody that you were looking at?
I mean, obviously, I'm looking at Jake Moody, place kicker. To lead. No, I was looking at I mean, it's probably greedy, but maybe Christian McCaffrey. Is that too?
What do you need? What do you need? Do you need Christian McCaffrey on the Seahawks? Are you feeling need? And you want to talk about best player on the Niners?
He feels agreed. He feels agreed. He's agreed.
Well, because you already have Kenneth Walker, and you already have his backup.
It'd just be nice to have, you know?
Or is the pick their quarterback, the guy from Iowa State, Mr. Irrelevant, came in, lighted up last year.
Over Geno Smith?
I don't know. He's
over
young,
Geno
hungry.
Smith?
Is it George Kittle? Is George Kittle the pick?
No, I would actually say if I was going to do offensive,
it's Trent Williams. If you're on,
it's
Trent Williams.
Yeah,
Trent Williams is the pick. The best offensive tackle in the National Football League is the pick. You don't need Debo. You don't need any of the receivers.
I was looking at them. You don't need those.
It's Trent Williams.
I think Nick Bosa is a good choice as a first, actually.
But Bosa's far and away your number one. If you were forced to choose an offensive player, it's Trent Williams. Bolster your offensive line, move one of your tackles inside the guard, and all of a sudden the Seahawks offensive line looks dynamic. So, yeah. No,
with a D.
With a big old D. A big old offensive tackle, Trent Williams D. Yeah, that's right. All right.
Yeah, he's probably going to hug.
News and notes. A little bit of a somber news today.
I've got a couple items.
NFL. Whoa. Death in the NFL community. Rest in peace to former Giants wide receiver Homer Jones. Homer Jones is the inventor. He's credited with inventing the touchdown spike celebration.
Really?
And that's a big deal. It's used by everyone and their mother today. Every kid in their backyard, when they score a touchdown, they're spiking the football. That all dates back to Mr. Homer Jones.
Spike transcends sports too. Not sports, but like the game of football. It transcends. It goes to different. People spike. In other things.
Everything.
Yeah.
Rob Gronkowski damn near built a career off of spike. So, obviously a very talented tight end, not to take anything away from him, but the Gronk spike is a thing, and he has commercials and endorsements surrounding the Gronk spike. Mm-hmm. The man spiked the Lego sculpture on New Year's Eve of Steve Harvey's head in front of Steve Harvey in the middle of New York City. That's enough said. What do you got out there? Because I've got a player related kind of breaking news thing similar to what we did at the beginning of last week's episode. I'm guessing you got one too.
Yeah, I've got a couple of pieces. I'll just do one just in case. My weekly news was out of the Colts camp this week.
Interesting.
And one of their draft picks, their rookie safety, Daniel Scott, tore his ACL. And is out for the season already.
You hate to hear it, folks, but that's the kind of the world you live in. OTAs and non-contact injuries. You hate to see it.
Sucks, man. Imagine.
That's very unfortunate.
Imagine
for the
getting
young
drafted.
Man. But the bonus is that he's young. Hopefully he can get healed up quickly and be back ready for next year. Thoughts and prayers go out to that young man.
T's and P's.
T's and P's. My second piece of news here, player personnel related, out of New England. Friend of the show, friend of the pod, one of our favorites, James Robinson, released by the New England Patriots.
Really?
He's a free agent. He's available. He's out there. So if you're keeping track at home, we now have James Robinson, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, and Dalvin Cook all on the open market. It's a crapshoot for running backs. That's a lot of big names out there, potentially impact players that you need to keep your eye on leading up to the draft. I looked at some mock drafts. Dalvin Cook's getting drafted in the 3rd round. He's still pretty high up there. So keep an eye on that, guys, as we move forward. What else you got, bud?
My next piece, which I guess has been since resolved, but I had written it down in that moment. A couple of news outlets reporting that Stephon Diggs for the Bills did not report to day one of camp, mandatory day one of camp.
Listen, this is much ado about nothing. Hell, the Jets canceled their OTAs because Aaron Rodgers didn't want to do them.
That's the most
So
Jets thing I've ever.
they just canceled.
They're
They're just like, we're gonna be fine. It's Rodgers. Discount double check. We're gonna be okay. And so this is much ado about nothing. Yes, it's nice that guys are getting their physicals done, making sure they're in shape, making sure they're ready to go. But the veterans oftentimes ain't doing much during this portion of the lead up into the season anyway. So
that might have been news for news sake, slow news day type thing.
Yeah, I really think that, and it's there's another little tidbit out of New England, by the way, today. I have one more that
I have a feeling I know what this is.
DeAndre Hopkins
yes,
went for a visit to the New England Patriots. He's non-committal. And reports are saying that he's in no hurry to sign. I can see why. If Stephon Diggs doesn't even report for OTAs for a team he's already signed to play for, DeAndre Hopkins is like, well, if I can just wait until the season, sign up and go, let me save my body. We got an extra game on the schedule anyway. So there's a lot of movement, a lot of potential, a lot of big players out there in free agency still looking for a home. This could be very interesting. There could be legitimate movement in terms of power rankings and projections for teams as we get closer to the season and some of these established veterans find homes. Because these are solid players to very, very good players that are still available.
I agree. Now, it's a lot of big name running backs, and we'll get to it a little bit further down in the notes here. Addressing every time I see NFL news or football news or any kind of football related stuff going on TV, there's this weird wind of like the declining importance of running backs overall. I think we're going to dive into that a little bit later, but maybe this is part of the kind of this first wave of do we really need big names at running back anymore? Can we get away with, should we invest in other parts of the teams? But it's interesting. I think all those players that you listed can still play. I think that all those players probably could still start, depending on the team.
I'd say at least 3 out of the 4 could start. Maybe 2 out of the 4 could start.
At least 50%.
James Robinson and Leonard Fournette. It's a toss-up. Depends on the backfield.
Depends on the team. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, teams like Arizona are always still out there, so probably 4.
But these poor guys.
No disrespect. No disrespect to man. What's his name?
Listen, I'll say it. There was disrespect.
Yeah, it was a little disrespect.
It's
more so to the organization, not the.
It's a train wreck. It's a train wreck. James Conner's great. We love James.
No disrespect to James Conner.
We love James Conner. Cancer survivor, friend of the show. But
yeah.
But get your quarterback in line, guy. Like, figure it out, please, because this is ridiculous. Anyway, let's get into it. Let's get into it. Kick us off, Pete. What's our first big topic today?
So, the fantasy talking points would be kind of the first big topic from me today, and I've been reading around. I'm just trying to look at some interesting articles, some interesting news, some things to think about. I found some from ESPN. I was browsing through their stuff, and there was an article in there, and I wanted to list this to you and see if you agreed, disagreed, maybe think different teams belong in this category. But they were talking about the top 6 most difficult fantasy offenses to rank or draft from for the 2023 season. And I wanted to share a couple of these teams, see if you thought that was on point. Say, hey, they're actually going to be fine. I don't know what the problems are, and just kind of get your thoughts and feedback as we go through this list.
Spoiler alert! I read this article. Spoiler alert! Okay. I have already read this article.
Perfect. So I think we were already talking about one of those teams, and they talked about Arizona.
Mm-hmm. At this point, I'm hesitant to touch Arizona. I might take a flyer on Kyler Murray. Zach Ertz is there, I guess. James
Yeah.
Conner, maybe if you need a running back.
So we're as receivers, we've got Marquise Brown, Rondale Moore, Greg Dortch as the 1, 2, and 3s.
I mean,
You do have Pascal
Marquise,
over from the Colts. I don't
yeah,
know much about Andre Baccalia, Baccellia, or I don't know much about Michael Wilson.
it's pronounced Bacelia. Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure that's true. And then we've got James Conner, obviously a great pickup. Corey Clement, was he on the Eagles last year?
He was actually on the Cardinals last year, but
Was he
he
really?
did play for the Eagles previously.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
He didn't play at all.
I don't even know I remember that, but that's what they have. That's what they have.
The Cardinals, let me just paint this picture, okay? Last year, and we touched briefly on this last week. Last year, when the Arizona Cardinals played without DeAndre Hopkins, their offense was anemic. It was anemic. They weren't scoring touchdowns. They weren't putting up large point totals. Their defense, while talented at certain positions, is aging. It doesn't have the youth movement that it used to. And look, they've got great safety depth. They got good pass rushers. They got some good linebackers on their team. But offensively, you can only block for so long. And if these guys at receiver can't become better route runners, they're certainly fast. I think probably your best all-around receiver is Dortch in that group. Marquise Brown is a speed demon. He's going to take the top off the defense. Everybody knows it. So if you want that big play flyer threat, similar to like a Ted Ginn, maybe not as proficient in terms of return game and things of that nature, but similar, maybe you take a flyer on him. Zach Ertz, he's going to be your tight end 12 or 13 this year. So he's your fringe starting tight end in a 12-team league. Maybe he's not. Maybe some of these young guys coming up are going to be good. We're going to talk about some of them later. But yeah, Arizona, generally speaking, in offense, not high on my list of draft eligible talent for fantasy football.
Yeah, I'm looking at this list, and I'm not outside of James Conner. Not in the first round, maybe not in the second round. I think if you get him in the fourth round, you're extremely lucky. You should absolutely take it. I think end of the second, early third might be a good spot for him. Everyone else, like you said, Ertz kind of a fringe guy on the tight end.
I'm gonna go one step further. I think he's a third to fourth round pick. Yeah. I think there are multiple teams that have two running backs that are more viable than him.
Yeah. Packers being one of those, by the way.
A big one of those.
I'm looking at this. I'm going. I mean, really, nothing on this offense interests me as far as from a fantasy perspective right now. So that's.
But you get in the heat of that draft, anything can happen. So.
Yeah, especially with the people we play with. You never know. Who's picked up.
What's the next team there?
The next team that I have on this list is Denver. So
now, see, that's interesting.
Now, I was thinking about this, and my guess is that it's on this list because of the massive changes, especially in the coaching sector.
100%
of the team,
and because of the lack of productivity last season.
Now, receivers that I like. So here's who they have on offense. They got Russell Wilson at quarterback, Javonte Williams, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Greg Dulcich, Michael. So those are just the offensive players. As far as the scoring players, I don't mind Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton as receivers. Maybe not. I had Cortland Sutton last year as a wide receiver, like one of my top two. It wasn't great. I struggled there big time.
Considering he couldn't catch a touchdown pass because Russell Wilson only threw
right.
10 of them all year or something like that.
Last year really makes me afraid of Russell as a starting QB. If you're going early, I don't know, man. I know every year's a new year and there's new coachings, but maybe it's just they're labeling it this as such because it's going to be hard to pin down because of what happened last year, and they've made so many massive changes in the coaching.
I'll say this. This might be a very bold take. I got Russell Wilson rated higher than Kyler Murray on my backboard.
I don't know if that's bold.
Kyler Murray's got a little more run game in him at this point in time, but they have a strong lack of proven playmakers on the outside. Their offensive line's been okay at best. They've got youth that they're bringing in there. And without DeAndre Hopkins on that team, that's such a huge void to fill.
And clearly made a difference.
And not to mention a brand new coaching staff. So
yeah. So are you going to be drafting anyone from the Broncos? Are you looking at anyone rather?
I would. I wouldn't.
Okay.
I wouldn't shy away from Javonte Williams, I should say. I wouldn't shy away from him. I think Sean Payton runs the ball and throws the ball to the running back out of the backfield quite a bit. I think that he's going to encourage Russell Wilson to take that check down the same way he did with Drew Brees. And if Russ listens and doesn't try to throw deep balls all the time, I think Denver can be a successful offense. The issue is going to be if he falls in love with the deep ball like he did in Seattle his last full season, where he was great for the first half of the year until defenses realized, hey, play deep and don't let him throw deep. And then all of a sudden he couldn't complete a pass and was throwing interceptions all over the place. Yeah. So that's the running back position I like for Denver. I'd take a flyer on one of those running backs potentially. And I think Jerry Jeudy has the ability in the route running to be like a Tyler Lockett in terms of a safety blanket. Obviously, they're different players, they're different makeups, they're different skill sets. But his route running and his ability to get open, I for some reason, every year I get suckered into that Jerry Jeudy pick because I know how talented he is. But you know what he reminds me of now, and who knows if he'll be this successful, but I was singing Cooper Kupp's praises years before he became Cooper Kupp, before he exploded. I drafted Cooper Kupp 2 or 3 consecutive years before he became the explosive Cooper Kupp that we know today. Shout out to Matt Berry on that. I listened to what he had to say. Not to mention, I saw Cooper Kupp play in college. I know how talented he is at Eastern Washington University. I got to see him play. Dude lit up my Washington State Cougars. So, the Broncos. I'd take Russ as a backup if I just really got locked out of the quarterback room.
I'm not opposed to Russell. I'm not, and it's one of those things like if you go heavy on the skill positions early and he's still there and like 5th round, the 6th round for sure, the 5th round maybe you leapfrog it a little bit. You're feeling froggy. I'd like to think that he comes back this year. I'm not saying no to Denver's offense as far as drafting this year. Next team I want to look at
off of need though, not off of planned.
Yeah, attack. it's gonna be more for me what's left versus I'm out seeking those players.
Agreed. Next up,
I have the Green Bay Packers, and
it's running backs or nothing for me. That's it.
Yep.
I'm not touching any of the receivers. I'm not touching their quarterback. I might touch their defense depending on how they look after their first couple weeks. They're still available, but
they'll be on the field.
Yeah. Running backs are bust at Green Bay. I think that's really the biggest and only fantasy position of value.
Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, I think you could draft independently and be successful with either one.
Well, and they're certainly going to see volume, right? You need a running game to support a young quarterback and to support any quarterback, but especially a young quarterback. It benefits them a lot. If they try to stick the passing attack and assignments that Aaron Rodgers was completing on this young quarterback, I think they're going to have a lot of trouble.
Now, Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon, for me, are running backs that I would go seek out. I'm with you. I agree with you on receivers. Those will be late rounders for me if no one else is on the board that I wanted. Maybe just I just want to make, get a wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 that's starting on a team and just stash them and see if anything comes of it.
If I had to take a flyer on one of those receivers, I'd take one. That's it.
Next up on this list, Indy. So we've
Well,
got the Colts.
there's an easy answer to this. The best player on their offense is Gardner Minshew, right? Isn't that
I mean,
isn't that who we go with?
yeah, we're not waiting for that. Probably a second rounder, if you want anything to get done this
First
year on your
overall.
team.
In all seriousness, there's only one way to go for their game, right? They can only get better what they did last year, and Jonathan Taylor's on a contract year. So you would think that he would be highly motivated to improve upon his performance last season. He had a report out this week where he was concerned about the value of NFL running backs monetarily, and so he's, keeping a close eye on that market for his contract renewal. They have some good receivers out there. Pittman's a very, very good receiver.
With Pascal gone,
it opens it up more. And if I'm in a deeper league, and I'm just going to say this right now, I take a flyer late round on Anthony Richardson. I'm not going to draft him early to be my starting quarterback, but if I already got a decent quarterback and I kind of just want to take a flyer at late round and I feel good about my team, I stash Anthony Richardson because there's a chance he comes in halfway through the year and he might not light it up in passing numbers, but the dude's an athlete and he's going to be running around. They're going to have to use him as in his running game at some capacity. And if he can come in and resemble a Justin Fields or resemble a Cam Newton or resemble an RG3 when he came into the league in his running ability, he might be on a bye week later in the year somebody you can lean on. And if he gets the start, say after week 6 and lights it up, somebody's going to pick him up quick. So just a flyer.
Seems like a Sean pick.
Just a flyer. Jonathan Taylor is not a reliable pick to me because I got burned last year. But see, I make this mistake every year. Somebody burns me the year before, I don't even touch him the next year. Well, wait a minute. Jonathan Taylor's got something to prove. I think he finishes as a top 5 running back this year because of necessity. I think they need a running game to support Gardner Minshew, to support Anthony Richardson, right? I think Jonathan Taylor will be a solid running back option this year. And I think the biggest reason for that is because Matt Ryan isn't the quarterback. With all due respect, Matt Ryan went in there and tried to be Peyton Manning. And he's not Peyton Manning, especially at this stage of his career. He should have relied more on the running game, but they built the offense around what he wanted to do, throwing the football, and the Colts paid for it by having a high draft pick. So from my perspective, they get back to ground and pound. They get back to the hard-nosed style of offense that they did 2 years ago. And I think the Colts, while they don't win a lot of games, I think this year, I think their offense becomes more balanced, and you could see Jonathan Taylor have some pretty big days.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's probably going to end up, despite last year still being a running back that people go seek and seek early. Maybe he's dropped a little bit further down in kind of the predictions or whatever, but
certainly don't think he's a number 1 pick this year.
He's proved right. He's proven to be that guy. So, at the end of the day, they're all professional football players, and I think he would be. I think he'd be lucky. I think he'd be extremely lucky to get him in the 3rd. He won't last that long, but maybe as like a number 2 pick. I think that would be a decent option. I've got 2 more teams left. Baltimore. As my next, the team in this list.
I think that's silly that it's on the list.
Okay.
Baltimore always, as long as Lamar Jackson's been there, Lamar Jackson will be fantasy relevant. Mark Andrews will be fantasy relevant. They've got Odell Beckham Jr. on their team now. He will have fantasy relevancy. I think it's their defense will have fantasy relevancy. I think that's silly that they just been put him on the list. I understand why they did it because they're unsure about Todd Monken, but come on.
Yeah, I agree. Odell's on there. Zay Flowers is on there now. Mark Andrews is always a top 5 tight end. Lamar is still Lamar.
We got
The
a
only
talented
thing,
rookie
the
wide
only thing,
receiver too.
the only thing that I've struggled with drafting Ravens players is the running back room, especially last year. I mean, it was like nonstop injuries across the board. If people stay healthy, I just don't know how to. It's just been unlucky.
It's injuries, man. Lamar's gotten hurt a lot. The running backs have gotten hurt a lot. They've had injuries at receiver a lot. If they stay healthy, this is a viable offense, top half of the league offense easily, with a very dynamic quarterback.
Yeah. For me, if I'm seeking anybody out, I'd probably still seek out Lamar if a couple of quarterbacks are off the board. Very specific.
Lamar's a top 10 quarterback.
I'd seek him out if he was available. I think Odell would be like a high risk, high reward type pick. If you've got any rookie rules in your league, I think Zay Flowers would be a good one. Outside of that, yeah, the other teams we've listed so far, this is probably the team with the most people I would seek out and look for.
Let's put it this way. This might be the most talented wide receiver room that Lamar Jackson has had in Baltimore.
So Nelson Aguilar, Devin Duvernay, Andy Isabella, Odell, Rashad Bateman,
Zay Flowers.
To
go along with Mark Andrews. He's got Zay Flowers could be a legitimate number one receiver in the NFL. He's got that kind of upside and ability. And Odell, while he's had some injuries, certainly has the ability to be a 1A or a 1B on a football team. He has the talent.
Knowledge
so if
too.
And the knowledge. And if he stays healthy, and if he stays healthy with Mark Andrews in the fold too, this might be the best receiving core that Lamar has had since he's been in the league. Bateman, also still a young player, still very good. So I'm just saying, look at the numbers that Lamar's put up in past years. He's probably got more talent out there than he's had before.
In the final team on here, which I was like, whoa, is the Seattle Seahawks.
That is simply people not trusting Geno to duplicate what he did last year.
If we're talking about talented wide receiver rooms, I think Seattle's got
a top 5 wide receiver room in the league. Some may argue top 2 or 3. Certainly Miami's on that list. It's just a ridiculous wide receiver room. Wherever DeAndre Hopkins ends up will probably end up on that list. The Bills are probably the Cincinnati Bengals are on the list. Holy smokes. How did I not say them first? But point being, the Seahawks have a loaded wide receiver room, a solid running back and a rookie that they believe is going to be a solid running back, 2 good tight ends, one of those very, very good tight ends, Noah Fant. They have a growing young offensive line who's probably going to just end up getting better. I think this is entirely precedented on Geno Smith being able to duplicate what he did last year, because people are still kind of in shock that the Seahawks were able to do what they did offensively last year.
Well, he's got a reputation to rebuild, because he had a really bad reputation for a very long time, and then last year was like, okay, we get it.
Yeah, except here's the problem: only 3 quarterbacks in the league had better stats than Geno Smith. I think it's 3 or 4 quarterbacks. He was in the top 5 of quarterbacks in the NFL last year.
Mahomes
Mahomes, Burrow, Hurts, and Josh Allen. I think he was 5th. I honestly think he was 5th in statistics, because his touchdown interception ratio was ridiculous last year. His QBR was ridiculous. He threw for a bunch of yards, a bunch of touchdowns, because he's got a loaded wide receiver room. When you got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett to throw the ball to, and you can give him time, Geno's always had a big arm. There's a reason he was wasn't he a number 1 draft pick or top 5 draft pick? There's a reason he was drafted so high. Athletically, he has the ability. The problem is he went to dumpster fire teams like the Jets, for God's sakes.
Yeah, they didn't.
When's the last time they've had a good quarterback, a successful quarterback? Pennington, maybe. They got Aaron Rodgers now, but he hasn't suited up a game for them. So we'll see how that goes. But he's easily the most decorated quarterback they've had since Joe Namath, in my opinion. I think this is completely predicated on doubt on whether Geno can duplicate his year last year. I don't know if he'll be as good as he was last year, but I certainly don't think it will significantly impact the playmakers around him's statistics for fantasy football. I think DK will still be a top 20 wide receiver. I think Tyler Lockett will still be a top 15 wide receiver. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba could be a top 30 wide receiver. I think Kenneth Walker can be a top 10 running back this year. I think Noah Fant will probably be a top 15 tight end, somewhere around those lines, depending on whether him or Will Dissly get the bulk of the yardage. I think the Seahawks offense have the talent, right, to have top end players fantasy football wise across the board on their offense, barring injury. It's their defense, I think, that's the problem.
It was a major problem.
If their defense can't fix their rush defense, which was the issue, they couldn't stop the run at all last year. If they can't stop the run, they're going to get beat like they stole something, just like they did last year in some games. Look at the Niners in the playoffs. So that's the main key. If the Seahawks defense shows up, maybe their offense doesn't have to do as much. Maybe Pete Carroll plays more ball control, and that could lead to a drop-off in statistics. But I don't know. I think that's entirely based on doubt for Geno Smith.
I would say of those 6 teams, Seattle and Baltimore are probably the top 2 teams that I would actually seek players from if we're talking about fantasy. I probably skip Indy for the most part. Green Bay, like you said, just for the running backs. Denver, maybe Russell Wilson, and maybe one receiver from there. Arizona, I'll probably stay away from. That's kind of my look at it, my view of those 6 teams. You have any thoughts on that, or?
No, I agree. That's how I would play it.
Well, that's basically we're going to have a lot of speculation and articles to reference like this, and a lot of stuff is just prediction. These are going to change drastically over time as we get closer and closer to the season. Barring injuries and last-second trades. So as of now, June 15th, that's what they deem as those. But like I said, Seattle, Baltimore, of those 6 teams, and then the running backs on Green Bay are probably going to be my top sought-after players.
Yeah. For those ones outlined by ESPN, at least.
We can dive into next week if we have our own list, if we want to talk about something similar. But those were just what ESPN was highlighting.
All right. What's next on the agenda here?
More fantasy forecast. Something we mentioned at the top of the show. Something that I've been seeing in the news, and I'm sure you have too. A lot of people are talking about, and even something with you were talking about with Jonathan Taylor, the declining, emphasis or importance being placed on running backs overall. I'm just wondering why, and the things I can think of are mobile running quarterbacks are becoming more prevalent. Running backs, good running backs or superstar running backs tend to be very expensive, but I don't know how long their careers are compared to other players. So maybe it's just like the payoff isn't as much. Maybe you can get away with not underpaid, but a much cheaper running back for maybe marginal difference in stats, and then you can invest in things you deem more important, like an offensive line, for example. Maybe you can do more with better receivers, just the way the game is changing. So, I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts, your feedback. Is this just something, again, news for news sake? Is this something that game, like the direction that the game is going? We not just fantasy relevant, but just the game itself. Like, are superstar running backs, and when I say superstar running backs, I mean just super highly paid, big names. Are they becoming less relevant? Is it more important to invest your money in things like a quarterback, an offensive line, and we can get away with like a B-rated running back and not have much of a difference in terms of wins losses at the end of the season.
Short answer to your question is yes. And this is not a new phenomenon. This is something that's been going on for the better part of the last decade. The NFL has been moving away from the bell cow, one running back, lead running back mantra and going to a more running back by committee backfield mindset. GMs are investing less money in the running back position and less collateral from the draft standpoint in the running back position now than they have in the past. Bijan Robinson got and Gibbs got drafted in the first round this year at running back. Last year, I don't believe there was a single running back drafted in the first round. So it varies from year to year, obviously based on talent and need, but for especially when it comes to re-signing running backs after their first rookie deal, the value that these running backs are able to command is significantly lower than, say, back when Sean Alexander re-signed with the Seahawks for his second contract, that 20 years ago or 10 years ago, whatever, however long that was, 15 years ago. You see running backs now who are holding out. It's happening with Saquon Barkley in New York. Jonathan Taylor's concerned about it in Indianapolis, where they want to get paid big money, but the market just isn't there. Ezekiel Elliott became a casualty of that for the Dallas Cowboys this year. It's likely that's one of the reasons Dalvin Cook got cut this year. And so that's the reality of today's NFL. There's the running back position is seen as a position that you can build through the draft for relatively low cost, and there's very few teams, or at least a shrinking number of teams, that believe you need to invest high dollar in the running back position in order to survive or to thrive offensively. Examples of those types of teams: the Cleveland Browns with Nick Chubb, the Tennessee Titans with Derrick Henry. Heck, the Chargers won't even pay Austin Eckler. The Niners were able to go get Christian McCaffrey via trade. They used that as collateral, but we saw that the Panthers, they just cleared cap. They said, you know what? He's costing us too much money. We got to rebuild the rest of the team around him. We need a quarterback. We need all these things. So they cut bait and used him as trade collateral. So you see a lot of, and another thing is you're seeing a lot of young running backs perform very well in their first, second, and third years in the league, barring injury. Kenneth Walker is a great example of that, right? Dalvin Cook, when he came into the league, was a great example of that. He was good immediately. Nick Chubb, once he got healthy from his knees, same thing. Kareem Hunt, same thing. You see the majority of the elite running backs in the league, outside of probably Derrick Henry and Austin Eckler, are younger, right? These running backs don't age well typically in the NFL. You don't see a lot of 30-plus-year-old running backs in the league that are putting up huge numbers. It generally doesn't happen. These guys take a lot of punishment. They put a lot of pressure on their bodies with the cuts that they make, with the physical interactions they have with the defense. Everything that they do just takes a major toll on their body. And the NFL executives has responded to this by saying, hey, maybe we figure out a way to make these 5th and 6th round draft picks better options for us, or more efficient and productive options for us. And then we use that money towards quarterback, receiver, defense, offensive line, things like that. I think it's unfortunate for people who play the running back position. I think there are certainly running backs out there that deserve money, that deserve to be paid top dollar. Ezekiel Elliott, when he got re-upped the first time after his rookie deal, I thought he deserved it. Saquon Barkley, I think he deserves it, barring physical, right? He is coming off a knee injury 2 years ago. So
he looked good last year.
He did look good last year.
Really good last year.
But they still got to pass that physical, right? And once you tear it once, you're liable to tear it again. It just is what it is. So, there are very good running backs out there, but oftentimes, and there's a lot of examples of this, when there are trades conducted for 28, 29, 30-year-old running backs who were very productive in their first 5, 6 years in the league, and they are traded, and the team that are trading for them give up a lot of collateral, oftentimes it doesn't work out well for them. And the biggest thing I can point to, and a little of this is because of who they gave up for it, is the Houston Texans. When they traded away DeAndre Hopkins to get David Johnson because he had a monster year the year before and he was a fantasy god, and he goes to Houston and lays a freaking egg and was done. And the Cardinals pulled off the steal of the century. That's the best example of that. Right? If you're going to trade for running back, you need to get them before they're 25 years old, or 25 or younger. You get these guys that are 26, 27, 28, 29, they might have some juice left in them, but they're closer to being done than they are to being a superstar, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of Derrick Henrys out there. They're not, out there in the parking lot waiting to get picked up. That's not how this works. Derrick Henry's a freak. Okay. Nick Chubb is a freak, but Nick Chubb's had his injury issues, right? Christian McCaffrey's a freak, but he's had his injury issues. How many years has Christian McCaffrey gone down with an injury and only played in 6 games, and people lose their shirt in fantasy because they picked him and he was great for 6 weeks and they were in first place, and then he gets hurt and he's out for the rest of the season and they finish last. Like, that happens a lot. So the running back position, that's why it's so coveted in the terms of fantasy football, because it's so volatile. So if you can find an efficient, productive RB1 who's going to get you 15 to 20 touches, maybe some catches and a touchdown every week, holy smokes, are you setting yourself above the rest. And if you can find 2 of them, you got a chance to win your league. And it's that simple.
I guess the challenge would be finding 2 of them. And I mean,
it happens every year, and it's always the guy who's a mid-tier running back in the rankings and you didn't think he was going to be available, or people just forgot about him. And somehow this guy, you look up and how the hell did he get Nick Chubb and Saquon Barkley? And somehow he's got 2 elite running. People prioritize receiver beforehand. People prioritize quarterback or tight end beforehand. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of fantasy football mock drafts out there that got Stephon Diggs or Justin Jefferson as the number 1 pick now.
Our champion last year drafted 2 receivers first.
And it can happen. It can happen.
So it does.
But
like you said,
it's rare.
Yeah,
it's rare.
Like you said, people ending up with like Saquon and Nick Chubb together. I can't help but feel like these changes and the way that the news is presenting itself, people are leaning more heavily toward receivers in early rounds. So you end up with like two top 10 or 2 top 15 running backs. And you're like, how did I end up with these guys? But maybe the offenses are changing, so maybe they're not as good as they used to be. But I do like, from a fantasy perspective, I do like that it's like disrupting the typical, you take 2 running backs with your first 2 picks every year. I mean, last year was the first year when I saw people taking 2 receivers. I know players change every year and everything, but I feel like it's more so now than I guess I'm used to.
Yeah, it all depends on where you're drafted. If you're drafting at the back end of the first round and there's a run on running backs before you and you've got back-to-back picks and there's an elite top 5 wide receiver on the board and maybe the number 11 running back, you take the receiver and the running back.
Yeah.
Because you've got to at least be elite at something on your team. And if you can't be at running back, if you can be good at running back and great at receiver, you be great at receiver. Mm-hmm. And then hope that you got a couple running backs that flew below the radar and have decent years. Like that it's all about where you draft, who's available, and everything around you. It's hard to predict, but like I said, I saw Dalvin Cook going in the 3rd round. Depending on where he ends up, that would be a steal, right?
Imagine having Dalvin Cook as your flex player all year.
assuming he ends up in a good spot, that could be amazing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and it begs the question then, if you're thinking in terms of fantasy, what position goes number one? Goes number one for you this year. I typically go running backs 1 and 2. That's just kind of how always the way I've drafted. I don't know. Receivers have never been my favorite position to rely on, typically because they're relying on somebody else as well. With these changes, with these thoughts, if you're going to do 10 mock drafts, let's say you have varying positions, do you think you'd end up more drafting 2 running backs, or do you think you end up drafting something with the receiver mix?
If I'm drafting number 1 overall, I'm taking a running back, and this year it's probably Christian McCaffrey. I had Christian McCaffrey. I drafted number 2 last year in one of my leagues. He was great, especially when he got traded from Carolina to the Niners. I felt that the sky opened and the Lord was blessing me. I said, "Thank you, football gods.
Yeah.
I appreciate you." And sure enough, he blew up in the second half of the season. I think there's only more to come with that offensive line and the skill sets they have, and the fact that they're probably going to be playing a young quarterback early and often. I think CMC's a dynamite pick. The other pick that I have, and I was torn with this. The other running back I might pick number 1. I have 2 on here. And first off, yes, it's running back is the position that I would choose number 1. I would not go receiver. And I know that's going to be contrary to a lot of the fantasy experts nowadays. I'm torn because part of me thinks that Austin Eckler's the safe pick. And there's another part of me that thinks that Austin Eckler's been trying to seek a trade out from the Chargers, and the Chargers, he might sit out and not play. He might pull a Le'Veon Bell. That's what I'm scared about. So my other option, it's either Eckler for me, or, and this might surprise some people. I think it's Swift. I think Swift in Philadelphia is going to be phenomenal. He was a great running back in Detroit. He split time, but he goes to Philly, and who's he splitting time with at back in Philly? It's nobody. And they got so many weapons, and Jalen Hurts is really the other running back. And I think Swift is a better version of Miles Sanders. I think he can catch the ball out of the backfield better. I think he's a better overall player. And I think with that offensive line and the receivers that they have on the outside and the attention that they pay to Jalen Hurts, that he can eat up yards and get his share of touchdowns. And I think while there's a lot of weapons and there's a lot of mouths to feed, I think he could be set for a pretty big year.
He's got Rashad Penny, Kenneth Gainwell, and Boston Scott behind him.
Look, Penny's your third down back, right? That's what the role he played for Seattle. Boston Scott, I guess they seem to like him sometimes, but generally I'm under the impression that Boston Scott got playing time because Miles Sanders was pissing the coach off. Like he wasn't at the whole hard, he wasn't breaking any tackles, and they were just like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I think that's one of the reasons they let him walk. But they signed Rashard Penny well before the draft. And instead of drafting a running back, they trade for Swift, who's he's an elite talent. And I think that he has the potential this year. If you're going to draft on potential and try to do a projection, he could be somebody that might have a massive year.
It's not science. I just try to draft players from good teams. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to be a good team, and I tend to agree with everything you said about them.
I know you're looking at
teams that are going to be in the end zone. They're in the end zone a lot. So, I agree. For me, I still think drafting running backs. I think having at least 1 to 2 elite running backs. I don't know. I mean, every year is different, sure. I just feel like they go further, especially if they're getting 15 touches a game.
Listen, you're talking to a guy that had Tyreek Hill and Christian McCaffrey last year and finished 6 and 7. All right, anything can happen in fantasy, Tyler. For those who don't know, those are the number 1 running back and the number 1 receiver from last year. Actually, I think it's the number 2 running back, but still, I had those guys on my team and finished 6 and 7. Anything can happen, right? Even if you got the guys, if you got the dudes, you might just get everybody's best punch when you play them. So it's all a crapshoot.
My next note, and we're gonna look at each position, just each offensive position. Do you have any what you would consider to be like top 1, top 2 targets in each position? These might be a little obvious, but didn't know if you had anything that would kind of go off the expected path. I guess DeAndre Swift would be one of them.
Yeah, I got.
Go
ahead. Running back, I got Christian McCaffrey and Eckler, but DeAndre Swift's kind of like my flyer. Wide receiver, it's Stephon Diggs and Justin Jefferson in no particular order, with Jamar Chase thrown in there as a flyer. Tight end's gonna be Kelsey and everybody else. That's just the way this works.
You like Waller on the Giants?
Well, listen. At the end of the day, Danny Dimes is throwing the ball. So,
yeah. Okay. Onward.
Yeah. Do I like it? Yeah. Do I think it's going to be better than it was in Vegas? Maybe. Probably not. But he was good in Vegas, so he's still top 5 tight end in my opinion. And then quarterback. Look, Jalen Hurts is the obvious answer, right? But I don't think Jalen Hurts will be the number 1 quarterback in fantasy this year. I think the number 1 quarterback in fantasy and the MVP of the National Football League this year will be Josh Allen from the Buffalo Bills.
Oh.
I think Josh Daddy Allen is going to be lighting shit up for the Buffalo Bills this year. I think they lose in the AFC Championship game at home in a heartbreaking fashion, but
again?
Look, it's the Bills, okay? It's the Bills.
My gosh, Josh has got to be annoyed getting so close much.
He's like Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly went to 4 straight Super Bowls, didn't win anything. So, anyway, I think Josh Allen has a monster year this year. I just like what they did in the offseason, and the Bills are loaded. So, yeah.
I agree. I'm going to go. I had Hurts last year for the first time, and my God, I regret nothing. I like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts for my quarterbacks. I had Eckler last year, who was amazing. I'll definitely be looking his way. I really like running backs that can catch the ball as well. So I like the idea of Christian McCaffrey as well. I don't know how highly. I've looked at multiple sources. A lot of people have Bijan Robinson ranked high. I feel like that's a massive risk, but who knows?
Yeah, I have rookie rankings written down here too.
All right,
so if we're gonna go to rookie, then
receivers for me. I know I'm not getting like a Justin Jefferson. I know I'm not going to get like a Jamar Chase, a Cup, a Hill. It's just not the way I draft. So I'll just take whoever's left. Basically, it's like a top 5.
Big Tyler Lockett guy.
Amon-Ra St. Brown. If I get lucky, I'll take an A.J. Brown. But most of the time, I'm falling into like Chris Olave, Devontae Smith, like Keenan Allen ratings down there somewhere.
Yeah, Keenan Allen, he'll get you 4 games a year.
Yeah, that's where I typically land as far as receivers. Tight ends, I agree. Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, probably, I would assume. Although TJ Hawkinson on the Vikings would be cool. Outside of that, I'm just taking whoever's left. And then defenses, I'm not sure if you looked at that. I feel like the Cowboys defense is always a solid choice. They're hard to beat.
The correct choice for number 1 defense this year is the Philadelphia Eagles. Their defense is loaded.
Yeah.
It's the Georgia Bulldogs. It's the Georgia Bulldogs.
ESPN has them rated 18th.
I don't know how they can have Eagles defense.
I think they're wasted when they're lists.
The Eagles they drafted Jalen Carter, probably the best draft pick for value that they could have gotten. right? They also got the middle linebacker / outside linebacker from Georgia in the first round off of one of the best defenses ever compiled in college football. They re-signed James Bradbury to pair with Darius Slay, which you could argue was the best quarterback pairing in the league last year. Oh, and by the way, they signed Greedy Williams from the Browns to a 1-year deal to play slot corner. That defense is low. They're gonna be good.
Teams they
Really
have
good.
teams they have
Not to mention they drafted Keely Ringo out of Georgia, just 6'2" safety, absolute freak of nature. That their defensive line is essentially Georgia Bulldogs from the past 3 years, and Fletcher Cox. Like, what are we talking about?
Teams they have, defenses they have rated higher than the Eagles. By the way, they have them ranked 18th. The Panthers, the Bucks,
okay,
the Saints.
Oh, Saints are gonna have a really good defense this year. They are.
We've got 49ers and Bills. That's kind of obvious. They have the Dolphins, the Steelers, Cowboys, the Packers, the Jets, the Pats, the Bengals, the Commanders, the Seahawks, which...
Listen, the Commanders defense and the Seahawks defense, while sturdy and just full of heart.
Yeah, my grandma was sturdy, but...
and full of heart. Beef heart, to be specific. Yeah. It was the 30s. The point is that it's not gonna happen.
It's disrespectful. It's a little disrespectful. Yeah.
You also got to think about who they're playing. Okay, in order to have a highly rated defense, you have to play competition that allows you to have a highly rated defense. If you're the Washington Commanders and your offense is led by Jacoby Brissett, listen,
onward.
love Jacoby Brissett, but come on now. Come on. That offense is not what the Cowboys offense is. It is not what the Eagles offense is, and it's not even what the Giants offense is. I don't know how Washington won 8 games last year, but I doubt it repeats itself. I'm just being honest. So, yeah, I can see the argument for some of those teams being better than the Eagles. The Steelers always have a talented defense. Tampa Bay certainly has some good players on it. Dallas certainly has a very talented defense.
Is not correct.
They're not bottom half of the league in defense, and that's where they're rated. I think the Eagles at the very least have a top 10 defense, and I would wager that they have the ability to have a top 5 or better defense. Although there are some teams out there that were mentioned above them that you read off that I can see having a better defense. I just happen to think that the Eagles, man, when we get close like that and they're young still, they've got the veteran leadership at key positions. I just got a feeling, Philly's coming. I just got a feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at on those. We could go over kickers, but to be honest, I guess I'm going to kick it back to you because you had mentioned it as well. Who are your thoughts in terms of rookie impact players? Do you want to attach fantasy predictions to it or leave it as is? Who's going to come through?
I think the obvious answers at running back for best rookie fantasy performers are Bijan Robinson and Gibbs out of Detroit. There's some other guys in there that could make a splash at different positions or on different teams, but those two are the clear-cut 1A, 1B running backs, with Bijan being considered widely by many to be the guy in the draft that you're going to reach for, that he could make or break your season. Excuse me. At wide receiver, I've got it down to 2. I think Jordan Addison for the Vikings could be one of the best rookie wide receivers in the league, mainly because he has Justin Jefferson on the other side. So the best corner is going to be on Jefferson every time. Their defense is going to be shaded to Justin Jefferson because they have to stop him. So I think he's going to get a lot of single coverage. I think that if he's as good as he displayed in college, he's going to be able to exploit that at times. And we saw Adam Thielen put up numbers on the opposite side of Justin Jefferson. So if Adam Thielen can do it, I think this young man can do it too. He's certainly talented enough. And the other one I got on there, and this might be a homer pick, it's JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba. He was the number one wide receiver in the draft for a reason. He's a fluid route runner. He was elite at wide receiver at Ohio State. He has the Rose Bowl record for receiving yards in a game with like it was like 230 or some ridiculous number.
Yeah.
And so he can play inside, outside. He can play wherever he wants. And he's probably going to see a lot of single coverage because you got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett on this team. So if he can get in a good rhythm with Geno, like I said, the Seattle offense, I don't understand. Outside of just lack of faith in Geno, I don't understand how they could be considered a top or a bottom 5 offense in the league this year, considering they were a top 10 offense in the league last year. And then tight end. This is one that you probably didn't think about, but I did. And I have a very clear-cut number one answer for who I think is going to be the most impactful rookie tight end of the league. And I think it goes squarely in line with my MVP prediction for Josh Allen. I think it's Dalton Kincaid, tight end out of Utah, arguably one of the best tight end names in the league. Dalton Kincaid, I'll say it again. He was dynamic at Utah. He was a tight end that could split out into the slot, create matchup nightmares. This is the kind of receiver that, yes, they have Dawson Knox. Everybody loves Dawson Knox. I love the red mane. But Dalton Kincaid is another level of athlete that I don't think Josh Allen's ever had. It's what they wanted Kelvin Benjamin to be when they had him up there. So I think he could create matchup nightmares. I think he's incredibly talented, and it helps that he played in a college environment where he saw a lot of snow and cold, so it's not going to hurt him playing in Buffalo in the fall. So, yeah, that's who I've got at tight end.
It's interesting you mentioned that because one of the pieces of news actually too is that Dalton Knox is injured and might sit out the rest of camp.
There you go.
So your boy might get a little extra practice time.
He's gonna get some reps. Yep. He's gonna get some reps. I think that's going to be a big factor for Josh Allen and the Bills this year.
I'm going to give you 3 names of the 3 rookie quarterbacks. If you're going to pick one to take you as far as the team can go, championship between Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, and C.J. Stroud. You can only pick one. Who's going further?
First off, I'm not choosing any of them as my starter. So at this point, I would only choose
just as a team, not fantasy. Yeah.
As a team in their rookie season,
if they had to start, if you had to start one, who are you going to start?
On the teams they're at now with the weapons that they have at each team?
Yeah.
Well, the best situation is Anthony Richardson. He's got the most established weapons around him, right?
Yeah.
The best quarterback of those 3, in my opinion, as far as being NFL ready, he's down at the Houston Texans. Okay. I think they got the best quarterback in the draft in CJ Stroud. I liked CJ Stroud the most. He played in a spread pass first offense at Ohio State. You see a lot of these offenses. Hell, you watched the Kansas City Chiefs win a Super Bowl last year in a spread pass happy offense. I think he has experience with that. He has experience playing with very, very good wide receivers. So I don't think the speed of the NFL wide receiver is going to be too much of him to keep up with, right? Bryce Young was the number 1 pick because he was the most decorated quarterback coming out of the draft. He is undersized. That has to be noted, but he's very smart. He's very talented, and I don't think he's going to have a bad career, barring injury. But the problem is the pieces around him aren't there in Carolina, right? You don't have Christian McCaffrey. You don't have Deontay Foreman. You don't have DJ Moore. Those guys are all gone, right? The pieces that they have there aren't well established. I think Adam Thielen's there now. I think
Yeah,
they're
Adam
probably their best wide
Thielen, DJ
receiver.
Shark, and Terrence Marshall Jr. as your receivers. You got Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard behind them. You got Hayden Hurst.
I like Chuba Hubbard. I like Miles Sanders, but
it looks kind of piecemeal, to be honest. If I'm looking
it does.
At this.
It doesn't look like. It looks like a lot of B-level players put in A-level positions around an A-level quarterback.
Adam Thielen is your wide receiver 1 right now.
I don't think Adam Thielen in his career has ever been a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I think that's
because he had Stephon Diggs first and Justin Jefferson second.
Probably learned some things though.
Oh, good for you.
It does look piecemeal. Looking at it, looks a little bit of a Frankenstein team kind of assembled, which tells me they're putting a lot of money on Bryce Young and rebuilding. I don't love it. This is another offense where I'm not really seeking anyone.
I think the best quarterback is if you want to talk about long term, I think the best quarterback, NFL ready style of quarterback, is CJ Stroud. I don't care what his Wonderlic score was; it doesn't fucking matter. Excuse my language. As long as he does his job, right? They've got a good young running back there for the Texans. They lost. Obviously, they don't have Brandon Cooks anymore, but they've got playmakers, young guys that they can put around him. Anthony Richardson's in the best position, right? If he can acclimate to the NFL world and he can develop as a quarterback, if they can sit him behind Gardner and let him learn, Anthony Richardson, I think, has the highest ceiling, but also the lowest floor, right? Anthony Richardson could be Cam Newton 2.0. Athletically and physical gifts, that's what he has. It's what he's made of, right? The problem is he hasn't proven it on the field yet. He has had flashes. We talked about this last week, but he didn't win consistently. So, listen, they've got great running back, good receivers, very good offensive line, solid defense. The problem last year was, and I hate to say this, Falcons fans, plug your ears. Matt Ryan shouldn't have tried to squeeze another year out. He should have called it a career and quit. But he ends up going to try to get another year out there and say, oh, yeah, we're going to go win a title in Indy. And they were worse off with Matt Ryan at quarterback than they were Jacoby Brissett the year before. Sorry. And I know that's blasphemy to Atlanta fans out there who have his jersey hanging in the Hall of Fame for some reason. Maybe. So I think Anthony Richardson, if he develops, could potentially have the most successful career of all of them. I like Bryce Young. I don't love Bryce Young. And I think that CJ Stroud, talent-wise, is the best quarterback of the three. But he is in a very tough situation.
I'm excited either way. I'm looking forward to I hope they all start because I feel like I've been more excited about this year than in the past to watch football. I was definitely more involved in the draft, even just like watching it.
Well, we haven't even talked about the most noteworthy rookie quarterback, Will Levis. I mean, the guy likes mayo in his coffee. He's a 6-game winner on average at Kentucky, but somehow thought he was going to be a first-round draft pick. He had to sit in the green room all night and pout with his mom, his sister, and his girlfriend. And then didn't even show up the next day to get drafted. I do feel bad for him. I'm not trying to make too much of that. But, he's got a chip on his shoulder, and he's coming in behind Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee. And quite frankly, how much of an indictment of Malik Willis is this? Remember last year at this time when Malik Willis was the quarterback that the Panthers drafted that the Titans drafted for the future, and Ryan Tannehill was giving pressers saying it's not my job to mentor a young quarterback. It's my job to play football. and they drafted another rookie quarterback in the second round this year. I mean, man, kind of an indictment of Ryan Tannehill, poor guy. But at the same time, are the Titans just whiffing on quarterbacks? It'll be interesting to see. Will Levis certainly has the physically, he has the body of an quarterback and the arm of an NFL quarterback, but I don't know if he has the mental makeup and the accuracy of an NFL quarterback, at least a successful one. So I wish him all the best, but I think Ryan Tannehill is firmly in Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm not worried about his starting job.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the final segment here. We're right at about an hour 15. The final segment here for this episode, I'll let you go ahead and take over.
Well, I think we're actually going to have to push this segment because this was going to be the bulk of the show initially, and we got carried away in the fantasy world with topics that got brought up that I didn't know were coming. So we're going to have to push the start of our NFL division forecasts to next week.
I'm okay with that. Yeah, let's not rush it. So I think that's what I will do is we finish on a little bit of a teaser, and we've already done a little teaser. You're going to get your NFL division forecast started next week. We'll break down every team. Next week will be the NFC East. That is where we're starting with the NFC champions and everybody else in that division. And we will give our predictions on, try to forecast how that's going to end up. I'm sure we'll talk about some other things as well. But another preview, this is coming down the line. Not going to be right immediate, but I want to put it on everybody's radar. We're not just an NFL and fantasy football show. That's right, folks. We talk about college football too, and we are going to start doing college football previews, right? And throughout the college football season and the NFL season, we're going to dedicate a portion of our show to college football and checking in with what's going on in that world too. I know there's a lot of shows out there that can do a whole show on just college or a whole show on NFL, but we're going to try and mix it up and give you a little bit of the best of both worlds. We're going to do a top 25 preview. We're going to do a conference preview and predictions. We're going to take a look at who's the Heisman Trophy candidates and maybe some predictions on some surprise teams to keep your eye on throughout the year. So I'm excited for that. Personally, I'm a huge college football junkie, and I'm thrilled to be able to share that love of that game and my knowledge with you guys. Well said. Well spoken. That is going to go ahead and wrap up episode 3 of the BALLBAG podcast. We do have some cover art and channel art in the works as we speak. So hopefully that'll be coming out very, very soon, and we'll get a little bit more organized and uniform across that in the socials. Right now, all these episodes are just on YouTube, but they will be when I get a free Saturday here. I'm going to be working on getting those on any platform or on all platforms where you listen to podcasts, and so you can have us on the go on mobile. But that should wrap it up for, again, episode 3 of the BALLBAG.